Welcome, folks, to The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
I'm Dr. Bud Marr.
We are joining you from these United States of America here in the middle of the country, seemingly one of the few places that has not gotten a ton of snow.
Yeah.
But here we are anyway in the studios of Iowa Catholic Radio, joining you for The Uncommon Good like we're always happy to do here on Wednesday. Bud and I both work at Mercy College of Health Sciences. I, out there, am Senior Advisor for Mission Initiatives and Director of the Center for Human Flourishing. Bud, what do you do at the old alma mater?
The Associate Provost at the college, so all things academic affairs. And you're right about the snow. It feels like news coverage of weather is more intense than when we were younger.
Yes.
Like so far this winter, the East Coast has had like a snow bomb or
cyclone.
Bomb cyclone. There you go. What's today's called?
Cyclone. I think today is laser snow clone. It's just going to keep upping and upping.
Well, we've got friends in Indiana, and I know they were expecting like over a foot. So
yeah, it's a really weird
God
swap
bless 'em.
because Oklahoma is closing down. So like this is where the connected world we live in. You kind of get the outposts from different places.
Yeah.
So family in Oklahoma, friends in South Bend, and then some of the people that we're hearing from New York, evidently all getting hit at the same time.
But it went south of us, so I'm a little disappointed, but it's cold enough, so...
It's true. The cold snap, we all have.
Yeah.
And that's the weather outside being frightful and all that. You know, but where it's warm, though, is inside Mercy College of Health Sciences, where not only is it well HVAC'd, like we're supposed to do, but there's the warmth of brains cooking as they learn new things. mchs.edu for everyone interested in the programs that Mercy College of Health Sciences has, because we want to say thank you for underwriting our show, but also this continuing series we've had doing on leadership and the Catholic social teaching. A lot of that learned both in the trenches of teaching out there that Bud and I have done, but also in our roles trying to steer the ship in the choppy waters of today's educational world.
Yeah, I occasionally have a friend or acquaintance who says, "Oh, yeah, you work at Mercy Nursing School," and I say, "No, nursing, sonography, radiation technology, physical therapy." So, got him.
What's great about that, too, is you want to talk about two unhealthy dudes that probably couldn't have told you a lot about medicine until we've been working here this time. And I don't think you still want either Bud or I not only operating on you, but probably even taking your temperature. However, the idea of knowing what it takes to become well-qualified, compassionate, and a medical practitioner, you and I have had a ton of time to steep on that and think about that, and can't be more proud of the nurses, the allied health, all of these health practitioners going out into the community, getting that education at Mercy College of Health Sciences, mchs.edu.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I'm not the king of the segues. You have some nice segues. I've always been jealous of your transitions, but... On a completely different note, happy feast of the presentation or candle mass to everyone. I know it's a special day tomorrow, too. I don't know if, do you?
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow's my birthday, but more importantly, it's St. Blaise's Day, where people get their throats blessed. And I'll be quite frank, because of how the liturgical stuff works out at Mercy College, so make sure to be at Mass today, bud, because we're doing the blessing of throats afterwards today.
Yeah, I was going to have Jimmy play Happy Birthday on air, but I guess there's royalties involved.
That's right.
They've literally copyrighted everything. Probably these chairs we're sitting on.
That's right.
Are trademarked. But happy birthday, buddy. And like I said, happy feast to everyone. Is this when you finally take down your Christmas decorations?
We're supposed to. We'll see if we get it done, though. We should schedule that tonight. But yes...
You're just lazy. It's like July 4th. Like, why are your Christmas decorations up?
Liturgical reasons.
We live Christmas year-round.
Yeah, well, they have LED lights now, so like what they need to do is make it where you can change them any color, and then we're like, that's the Lent tree. That's the only other sort of excuse. If you have a live tree and it's dying, you're like, Lent tree.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, we'll get them down tonight. So Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr, The Uncommon Good, like I said, continuing talking about leadership in the Catholic social teaching tradition. We're going to talk about maybe a little bit more practical implications today, so not that we're wrapping up by any means, but you'll want to make sure to stick around for this. This is The Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Stick around, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Savage Power.
At Intervisions Healthcare, we see patients with unplanned pregnancies from ages 12 to 43. An unplanned pregnancy is traumatic at any age. For that reason, we specialize in educating, encouraging, and empowering vulnerable and at-risk mothers facing an unexpected pregnancy with the medical information and services necessary for them to make an informed decision. For more information on the free medical services at Intervisions Healthcare or to support our mission or become a volunteer, visit ivhcare.org.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Fast Signs. Learn more about their signs, digital signs, banners, and other products and services at fastsigns.com or 515-224-1210.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Blessman International. According to a global food security report, more than 820 million people in the world are hungry today. None of us can help them all, but how about one? One child. Blessman International provides 60,000 children in South Africa with a daily hot meal, place of safety, educational experience, and spiritual development. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. That's blessmaninternational.org. Thank you, Blessman International, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry. Sarah is an apostolate dedicated to the support of new and existing vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Construction Professionals. Construction Professionals does remodeling and new construction. Construction Professionals is a Catholic family business built on a strong foundation. CPCustomHomes.com. Thank you, Construction Professionals, for supporting Iowa Catholic Radio.
Back with the Uncommon Good, Bob Honor, Dr. Bud Marr, joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. So, Bud, we're continuing our series here, talking about leadership and the common good, Catholic social teaching, and everything that pertains to. So, to set the scene again, Philippians 2 really is the centerpiece for what we're talking about, that Jesus Christ emptied himself. That's kenosis, right? The self-emptying leadership, pouring yourself out for others. And we've talked about how that means we're going to have to radically rethink what leadership looks like. Part of that is, we brought up another Greek word, apophatic, the via negativa, the way of negation, where we rule out what leadership cannot be. What can leadership not be if it's going to be an imitation of Christ? So we've talked about some of that, the scenes where Jesus washes the feet of his apostles and says, it will not be like you among the Gentiles, things like this. Well, continuing a bit with this apophaticism, right, this via negativa, a negative way to consider these things. So that was talking about leadership itself, and if we're asking what leaders should look like, one of the funny things we should first consider is what they can't be if they're going to be imitating Jesus. But in a second way, we start to think about how leading people actually is a lot more apophatic as well, because it seems, Bud, like what you're going to do as a leader is tell people to do things, force people to do things, imbue them with your charism or your skills or your charm. But there's a way in which what we really want to do when we're leading people is set them up so that they can be not only the best versions of themselves, or things like these sort of catchwords, but that it really isn't necessarily micromanaging or installing things in their head. And one of the ways we get at this is one of the more, I'm trying to think of the polite way, the wily thinkers, Nassim Nicholas Taleb has a book called Anti-Fragile. And by no means do Bud and I blanketly say everything that he does is perfect, but I think he had a good way of talking about what it is that we're actually hoping we make people be like in the world. And he has an interesting sort of definition or three terms to help us think of that.
Yeah, so when we think of leadership, we usually think of strength. And another word that you could use there is robust, sort of like a large boulder to us seems like immovable or impenetrable. But Taleb points out that even a stone, like over time, will be eroded by something like water, which sort of like passes through our hands. But in some ways, like it has a greater strength to, like whittle down a stone or whatever. And he makes that, he takes that sort of as an analogy for human life, where a lot of times in life what we seek is like optimization or efficiency. So one example that he throws out early on in the book is when we travel, right? Like, he does this much more creatively than I do, but when we think about taking a trip, say we want to visit Europe, like to Paris, as Americans especially, one thing that we'll try to do is to like really minimize our layover time because we don't want to spend our vacation sitting in an airport. But Taleb points out that if you over-optimize your trip, if you try to make your layovers so short, and I've experienced this before with 6 kids in tow, it's no fun. You may miss out on Paris altogether, at least for a couple days, right? So there's a way where we prize efficiency and sort of like easiness to the point that our persons or our relationships or our organizations become fragile. So Taleb points out that what you actually want is not necessarily something that's robust. I mean, that might have its place in life, and certainly not something that's over-optimized, but something that's anti-fragile, something that can withstand the storms and the buffets of life, sometimes because there's even what he calls resiliencies. So you think about like an airplane, on one level you could save money and, maybe fuel on having a lighter plane with just one like really optimized engine. But if that engine happens to have any sort of mechanical problems, it's great to have a second backup engine. And there's a lot to unpack here, but in our lives, especially like I said, in our organizations, that anti-fragility is key.
Yeah, so it's interesting when people think of the word fragile, they think of weakness. But Taleb's point is actually that there's quite strong things that their strength relies on being fragile. So that fragile, like you said, is being over-optimized, meaning that something works great, but only if a certain set of conditions pertain. So, for instance, the world economy in 2019. So you don't have to think of like grandma or like a glass figurine, although those things are sort of into the fragile world as well. But the idea that the world economy in 2019 only worked if things were running exactly in a perfect way, and all you had to do was throw in a communicable virus, and the world was so fragile that we're still dealing 2 years later with the sort of ramifications of what's going on. But as you said, the idea of opposing fragility is not merely being robust or resilient. I mean, that's good, better than being fragile, I suppose. But over time, that just means still that the buffets of the world wear you out. Anti-fragility is not only that, you have, like you said, redundancies, that's why we have 2 lungs in case one fails. But it's also the capacity to grow from disorder. And that's what I think Taleb's main insight is that in a weird way, he overdoes it, but the idea is that living organisms that truly thrive, they kind of thrive because of disorder and difficulty. Yeah. And he makes this point with like lifting weights. Like the point of becoming strong through lifting weights is to actually put your body under stress. But of course, the idea is a certain type of stress, a certain type of difficulty. So if we never submit ourselves to difficulty, and this is where it gets into the leadership thing big time, if you think the goal of being a leader is to remove all difficulties for your kid, for your worker, for the people following you, that can work until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't work, it fails catastrophically. Yeah. So, glass, like, we can look through windows at beautiful things like Jimmy's face on the other side of the studio here. Glass is fragile not because it's weak. It's great. It's strong. It keeps out, things. You can look through it. But if you throw a rock at it, it's not that it's weak, it's that it's only optimized to a certain situation. And then when it fails catastrophically. So it doesn't, quote unquote, learn from difficulty. It's either working or it's not. Leadership has to be willing to face difficulties and then let people under us face difficulties so that they might grow and become anti-fragile and rather than just fragile or resilient.
Well, Taleb, the author of this book, has some really, he's kind of an eccentric personality, so some fun sections where he sustained a nose injury, right? Was walking and tripped on a crack or something. And when he goes to the doctor wants to give him these medications like antibiotics or whatever to deal with the infection. And Taleb says, like, do I absolutely need these? And the physician's like, well, I guess not. Like, your body could do the work under the right conditions. And so I think Taleb for the next couple weeks or whatever spent his life like his normal work routine with like a pretty damaged nose. But the point is, letting his body learn to deal with that injury and to like sort of heal itself. I think about this with parenting and leadership. Like as a father, there's an impulse to sort of spare your kids any sort of like suffering or difficulty. Like you see another neighbor like picking on them and you want to immediately intervene. Or sometimes like in the great outdoors, like, don't get too close to the stream or whatever happens to be. I'm not counseling complete imprudence when it comes to parenting, but there is a way, right? Like, especially like with our boys, we want to push them outdoors and let them experience the world as it is, because if we just kept them hidden in the basement, like wrapped in bubble wrap, they would never truly be prepared for the world. If you've ever taught, very similar, Bo, when we took over servant leadership at Mercy, I think like well-intentioned, teachers at the school thought like, well, this is very different than their nursing courses or like statistics or microbiology. That's like that's the tough part of the education. And we thought like there's a way where you could just have them like do crosswords or memorize, a few terms or whatever. But we thought like if this is a class on leadership and this is preparing them to be a certain type of person, we should have them read difficult books, like have them read Aristotle, Nietzsche, and really be challenged so that they could be broken down, so to speak, intellectually, and then emerge as a completely different type of person.
Well, I think this is a big thing going into burnout in fields like medicine, counseling, anything where you're going to face like the existential aspects of human reality, right? Like if you go help sick people, you face suffering, you face death. And so you can go like, oh, well, they're going to have enough death and suffering in their lives, so let's just not talk about it. But of course, that's the thing that sort of optimizes them to fail catastrophically, right? If you don't throw in, like you said, the difficult text, and it's not only difficult, like they're hard to read, but difficult, like to wrestle with. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think human life is for? What do you think healing people is? What does that consist of? And you want to throw in those difficulties in education so that when the truly difficult things have come, that you have not set them up to fail catastrophically. Do they have the capacity to, so to speak, prepare the muscles of their soul, right? And another analogy of this one more time with lifting weights. It's not only lifting weights. Taleb's this big guy to say you should do free weights, right? Because if you do weights on a machine, you get really strong, but only in like sort of one sort of motion, and the sort of microfibers and things like this, I'm going to mess it all up, don't get the same sort of workout than if you do free weights. And in a similar way, right, with our curriculums, if we're not willing to throw out open-ended questions that make them wrestle with things in a profound way, we're going to make it where they can answer certain types of questions down a very obvious track, but then when new things come, it's going to be unoptimized, it's going to be inefficient, and they're not going to have those resources to be anti-fragile. So this is the Uncommon Good. We're heading up to the break. Stick around because we'll be back after this, continuing our talk with leadership and how that relates to Catholic social teaching. This is the Uncommon Good. We'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Catholic Charities, where exceptional service is a hallmark in caring for those with essential needs, including food pantry, professional counseling, emergency family shelter, and refugee services. CatholicCharitiesDM.org.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Rick Schaefer of Sullivan Auctioneers, LLC, conducting professional full-service auctions for farmland and farm machinery since 1979, and Sullivan Land Company Real Estate Brokerage, 515-313-5508, sullivanauctioneers.com. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Confluence Brewing Company, brewed locally since 2012 and featuring regular, seasonal, and limited release beers. Confluence Brewing Company, 1235 Thomas Beck Road off the bike trail south of Grays Lake, confluencebrewing.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by CTO. What great news for donors to the Catholic Tuition Organization. You now receive 75%. Yes, 75% of your donation back in Iowa tax credits beginning January 1st of this year. Your support has helped thousands of students attend our Catholic schools. Best gift ever. Online, ctoiowa.org. At CTO, the bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping. Learn more about Five Sons Naturescapes at fivesonsnaturescapes.com. fivesonsnaturescapes.com.
Thank you, Caldwell Parish, for underwriting Iowa Catholic Radio. Conform to the wishes of the deceased and to Catholic liturgical burial traditions. Caldwell Parish Funeral Home, Des Moines' only Catholic-owned and operated funeral home. CaldwellParish.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Skeffington's Formalware, in business since 1951, with locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Coralville, and Ankeny. Skeffington's Formalware, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. Wrapping up this episode talking about anti-fragility when it comes to leadership and Catholic social teaching. I know that it might not seem like we've mentioned Jesus very much yet, but it very much plays into the leadership we think that Jesus himself shows, right? This idea of the apophatic, the via negativa, pouring yourself out, right? All of this starts to be of a piece where we imagine that what you should do is give people things, that being a leader is to sort of have things that other people don't, and either make them do it, make them have it, etc. But in many ways, leadership is about opening up space for people to become, like we said, not just resilient, but anti-fragile, where actually the slings and arrows of this life provide a way for them to grow and become something more, and not just simply an imitation of what the leader looks like. I think about this, Bud, in terms of like advice you give students. It's easy just to ask students, what do you want? What do you want in life? Yeah. And of course, people can say like everything from, oh, I want a job that makes me fulfilled, to like 40 Rolls Royces or whatever it is. You know, what we want is to be happy. You know, we can cover that with Aristotle. But there's a real way in which, if we're taking serious that leaders have to make people anti-fragile, that you can ask this most basic question, which is, if you had a choice, like say you have like 3 jobs you can choose from, it's easy to think, which one would I want if it all went well? But what's more accurate in life, Bud? How many times have people done something in life thinking, this will be great if everything works out? But of course, it rarely, if ever, does. So instead, what you should ask is, of these 3 options, if everything went wrong, which one would still allow you the chance to grow from the difficulty?
Yeah.
And in many ways, that might radically change how we decide to make decisions. And as you're pointing out at the break, as we're going to talk about here, our Lord does something similar when he talks about the cross.
Yeah, when we were discussing anti-fragility, I was thinking about, like, in what way does Jesus exemplify this? And I think this is related. I'm kind of doing it off the top of my head, but you can... Next episode will be like, here's where Bud went wrong. No, I think one way that Jesus like counsels or pushes his disciples into anti-fragility is he teaches them a kind of detachment to the things of the world. And I think this relates because one way we try to optimize our lives is through security. Like if I have just enough money in my bank account or the right kind of home in the right kind of neighborhood, like I can, so to speak, like protect myself from anything that comes my way. Like insurance commercials are all about this, right? And Jesus recognized that there was a way where the disciples could possibly think about those things and say like, well, I can do something great for the kingdom if these conditions are in place. But he basically challenges like the rich young ruler to give up everything. His own apostles, he says words like, you know, you must hate your brother and sister, your mother and father, give up household land, etc. When he sends them out, he says, take nothing with you. Like if you go into a house and people reject you, shake the dust off your sandals. And I think in all those ways, Jesus was challenging his disciples to rely on God alone, that there was a way that they could over-optimize their lives to the extent that they would actually miss out on the coming of the kingdom of God.
No, I think that that's a radical way to think about why the cross is a gift that Jesus would give us, that the cross doesn't, it's like you said, doesn't allow us to get fragile by attachment to things in the world, but even actually allow things like difficulties. The cross allow us to be those things that will actually make us resurrected into something much more anti-fragile. And I think this leads into the last concept that we're going to only say today that points to the next time that we have, that when we talk to the show, which is that Taleb's idea of skin in the game, that what is it that leaders must do in order to carry out their obligation. So next week, we'll talk about how all that we talked about today, anti-fragility, leads into skin in the game, how that helps us understand leadership, specifically in a Christian key, imitating Jesus in his self-emptying leadership. So this is the Uncommon Good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts, our families, our city, our state, our nation, world, solar system, galaxy, the whole kit and caboodle. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back next week. But if people want to be a part of our prayer life here on Iowa Catholic Radio, what is an easy way for them to do so?
Yeah, please join us in prayer. You can pray the rosary with us anytime, anywhere on the Iowa Catholic Radio app, but it's broadcast live, on air, 6 a.m. at 10 a.m. right after local programming. That's followed by daily mass, which is great. And then 2:55, right before 3 in the afternoon, we pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet on air.
And folks, if you want to make sure to be a part of Iowa Catholic Radio and all that we're doing here in the diocese, it's easy to keep track of that as well. You can, of course, go to the website, iowacatholicradio.com, where you can listen live, check in on all the shows, but also see what is scheduled and coming up. For instance, we have our spring carathon coming up here in a few weeks, and we want to make sure that people are aware of that and thinking prayerfully about ways to contribute so that this great ministry can continue. You can also keep up on all of these things on Facebook, where you just friend us on Facebook. You can go on Twitter at IA Catholic Radio to follow our tweets. But then also, if you download the Iowa Catholic Radio app, anywhere that you have data, you can listen live, listen to recorded things, donate, keep track of all of those things as well. But one more time, this is a ministry of that is not only the people here on the radio and also behind the decks or in the offices. This is your ministry as well. So we ask you to prayerfully consider praying for us, donating to us, and thinking about how your physical donations allow us to materially exist and perpetuate this wonderful ministry. And so, as I said, iowacatholicradio.com, or if you want to call 515-223-1150 to donate. But one more time, we are coming up on the Spring Carathon here in February, so we're hoping that people can start to get in mind prayerfully thinking about how it is that they might want to help contribute to Iowa Catholic Radio and all that we do here. Well, Bud, another great show. We don't have snow to worry about so much, but I hope everybody makes sure to bundle up.
Yeah, thanks. Blessings, everyone.
So this is the Uncommon Good, and like we said, we love you guys. We thank you for supporting us. Think about what we're going to do for Iowa Catholic Radio Spring Carathon, gee whiz, and keep up with the prayer life here, as Bud said. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back next week.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and The Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.